Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar. Just had to check to make sure the camera was still working. Still professional as always, Drew. In fact, this thing's about to explode in my face. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, the most professional talk sports show. We switched them?
Yeah, I took care of you.
Okay, awesome. Perfect.
When you do it, can you aim it directly at
Most
your face?
professional sports show in human history. Honestly, we're leading the charge. We're glad you're here. Honestly, it's been a fun day. We just talked about Mike Daniels on Wednesday. We already have a little bit of closure on that. He signed with Detroit. We're going to talk about what that means for the Lions and the NFL going forward, especially that NFC North division. Yeah, okay. We're also going to talk about Kevin Byard getting a new contract, and we have a new highest paid safety in the NFL. We're going to talk about if that's worth it. I know you guys can pile on, every non-Titans fan that wants to throw that in my face. We'll talk about that too. And we're also going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons in 2019.
Martavius, man, glad you could join us. Thank you so much for that share, man. It means the world to us. Actually, you know what? Just because, let's talk about Kevin Byard first, because I have always said, man, you guys have great safety back there. And you're like, nah, he's overrated.
Did I say that? Did I say he was overrated?
Yeah, you shat on him every time I try to talk positive about a player.
Is that the professional term? I shat on him?
You shat on him.
Okay. No, I think Kevin Byard's a great player. I think he's one of the best run/pass defending safety combos that you're going to have in the NFL. I still don't think he's worth, $70 million over the next 5 years, but I think he's a great safety.
Are you going to say about Marcus Mariota when they sign him?
Oh, if they give him, he is definitely not worth $70 million. Let me say this. If this means we're not re-signing Marcus, and I was going to go into this point much farther down the road in this conversation, but if this means they're paying Kevin Byard, and maybe we pay Jack Conklin on the right tackle, and we pay Dennis Kelly to stick around, and we don't keep Marcus, or we don't overpay for Marcus Mariota, I'm sold. Sign me up for that. I'm all in. This doesn't work, though, if you give Marcus a $30 million contract, because there's just not enough money to go around. That means they're going to have to make cuts elsewhere, and their team is going to get worse. And when I first heard this news, I was like, uh-oh, that's not good news. But then I thought about it, and I said, maybe this means they're washing their hands, and the Marcus Mariota era is coming to an end in Tennessee, short of him taking a very team-friendly deal.
All I got to say is every time I ever talked about Byard, you would kind of talk down about him.
Would I? I talk down about a lot of people. I don't actually recall it, but
I said I think he's a great player.
I think you're right.
You're like, he's okay.
I think he's a great player.
Now that your team has paid him, and now you're stuck with him for the next 5 years.
Even before that, for the past 3 years, Kevin Byard has led safeties in interceptions, and he only started for 2 of them.
Yeah.
He was a rotational guy before that. Right. He played a lot, but still rotational as a rookie. He's a young player, so the 5 years doesn't bother me that much. I think he's going to come off this contract at 28 or 29, so that's okay as well. He's also played 99.7, and maybe that's why you love him so much, Drew, percent of the defensive snaps since he's come into the league. That's unheard of.
I love it.
Nobody plays, I think I said he's missed 6 snaps on defense.
That's amazing.
And that was rest. That wasn't because he was hurt. It wasn't anything else. It was all rest. So, to me, absolutely fantastic player. In the past 2 years, 124 solo tackles, 12 receptions, but I do want to get into this meta point before we move on, Drew. Is it too much money to give a safety in today's NFL? Is that too much? That kind of contract, does it hold the rest of the team back for a guy that this position is looked at as a luxury in the NFL?
No, it's not. And I know everyone's going to sit there and say it, and I'm not even a Titans fan. This is, what do you pay players to be? You pay them to play the game as best they possibly can and be out there on the field. What has this guy done? He's been on the field as much as he possibly can, and he's succeeded in one of the biggest statistics that you want a defensive player to play, and that's turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely.
You absolutely play him. Another reason why I like Xavier Howard, and that's another reason why I like that guy, is because he can turn the ball over on the defensive side. Byard, in my opinion, might be a better player.
Oh, I totally agree, because I think when you look at the catches allowed going up against people, against tight ends, he shuts them down like 88% of the time or something like that. So
yeah.
You don't say that with Xavier Howard. You say you take the good with the bad. You take the picks with the catches he's going to give up. You really don't have that with Kevin Byard as much. This is more of a two-way player that's going to get the job done, whether it's running the ball and he's coming up to support or whether he's dropping back into coverage to shut somebody down. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Jeremy wants to know, where would we rank him in the NFL at safety? I mean, it's hard to say the guy's not number one. I like Landon Collins, but I don't know that Landon Collins is the same kind of mix. I think it's probably 1 and 2 with those guys in today's NFL.
Ooh,
it depends also what you're asking for.
I don't know. A healthy Earl Thomas, he's number 1.
But that's the thing. Is Earl Thomas going to be healthy, and is he the same guy anymore?
Jeremy, that's a hard question. To be honest, that's a hard question. I mean, he's extremely healthy. He's very productive, and he turns the ball over. Man, it's really hard not to put him up there. To be honest with you, it probably for me would go Earl Thomas, Landon Collins, and then Kevin Byard. But it's hard. Well, those three, honestly, it's almost three different style of plays.
Right, absolutely. And also, you could argue that just because Landon Collins hasn't played with the defenses Earl Thomas and Kevin Byard have played with in the past, so it's hard for him to shine, or it's easier because he's going out and generating all those tackles because nobody in front of you is hitting him. When you're on the Titans and you're generating 124 solo tackles over 2 years, with as good as this defense has been, as a safety, that means you're doing your job because he's not the strong safety. We had Cyprian and we have Vaccaro play that kind of role where those are the guys that drift forward, especially on running plays. This is him just reacting and making the right call and going after the ball. Really, Kevin Byard is the guy who plays over the top of the defense. Yeah. And when he diagnoses the play, he comes up and makes a bunch of tackles. I think there's a potential he might be the best guy in the NFL now at this point. When you take in Earl Thomas's health and you take in Landon Collins for the past couple of years, I get it. The Giants sucked. Yeah. But I think part of it's that could work against Landon Collins' argument as well. I think he's definitely in the top three. I'm going to put him at 1. I am. I'm going to say he's the best safety right now.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I don't disagree with you. I just view it a little bit differently. I think Earl Thomas, prior to breaking his arm, was just doing amazing things on the field. Then Landon Collins, you nailed it on the head. It's wait until he plays with a team like the Redskins where they actually have a good defensive line. I mean, this guy might be doing a lot of crazy things this year. I would have liked to say Eric Berry, but he hasn't been healthy for 2 years.
I agree. We'll move forward, though. We'll talk about the Lions. I will say this. One more thing about Kevin Byard. Like I asked before, do you think it's possible to pay a safety this kind of money and have any success in the NFL? I'm going to say yes, as long as you're a team that's not paying a bunch of other guys. Right now, the Titans, they're paying Taylor Lewan, but they don't have any major contracts besides him on the offensive side of the ball. And then you don't have any major contracts on defense. The guys have taken team-friendly deals. Guys like Jarrell Casey on the defensive line have taken team-friendly deals to keep the money down and keep this team good. As long as you have it to spend, I'm okay with this. The real problem and the monkey wrench comes in when you go and give Marcus a big contract or Ryan Tannehill a big contract. Right now, you can't afford to give a guy $25, $28, $30 million and expect to keep a good defense together.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Nathan. I'm glad you could join us. Where is everyone? Well, hopefully they're just jumping on. They're getting ready to get into the Falcons later on in this show. But
must be nice all around the country. I think everyone's gone out tonight, but that's okay. We'll keep going. We appreciate each and every
one of you guys. We're out right now
at
the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they are too.
Waitress.
We appreciate you guys being in here with us. But now we're going to talk Mike Daniels signing with the Lions. We were just talking about this guy, and I said someone's going to snap him up. If I was Seattle, this would have been my move 100% with Reed missing some time. The Lions jumped first. The Lions gave him a big contract right out of the gate. They said 1 year, $9.1 million. I think 7.5 of that's guaranteed, Drew. And when it's a 1 year contract, you're going to see most of that money. You basically can say that's going to be $9 million in this guy's pocket. Short of them stacking this with bonuses he'll never reach. I think when you look at this move, they wanted Mike Daniels not only for the fact that he was a Packer and you're going to gain some kind of insight on what they were doing, even though their offense has changed, but I still believe Mike Daniels going in there. We're now talking about the Lions putting together a really good run defense. I mean, Snacks Harrison and now you have Daniels coming in to play next to him. You have two great run-stopping veterans in the middle of that line. You've got a great one in Trey Flowers on the outside. This is how you build a defense, right? You bring in these top-dollar, top-name guys, and suddenly you go from being pretty bad to being pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Nate's asking about A.J. Brown's update. Realistically, we don't know a whole lot just yet. He left practice early. It was a slip. It could be anything from a hamstring to an Achilles to you nail it, man. But so far, nothing's really came out. It was a quick, 5-7 yard route where he's supposed to cut back in, and his foot slipped. We believe it's his right leg. But from that point, we don't really know a whole lot just yet, Nate.
Scary news for the Titans, but I wonder how much work he was actually going to get. I know when you spend a high pick on a receiver, you expect to see him pretty soon, but I think the Titans have a lot of weapons. I was kind of interested to see how he was going to slot in with things. Is it bad for the Titans? Yeah, because you want the guy in there healthy and working and growing as a player, but Are they necessarily going to be missing wide receivers? I still think they have a deep enough roster. It's not as big of an issue, even if it is a season-long thing. If you tore the ACL.
I don't think it's anything torn like that. I mean, if you go back and you watch the route being ran, there's video out there. You know, he slipped, he got angry, and he walked off. There was no visible limp. But are we talking maybe the rest of training camp? It's a good possibility. You know, he might not actually get to practice anything until maybe the first preseason game. But, you know,
that can be a major setback.
But to what you were saying is, how much was he going to be part of this offense? Yeah, he was going to be out there. But when you pay Adam Humphries and you have the gentleman that I like to make fun of you about that I told him he's going to be
Corey
a chief.
Davis.
Corey
Yes.
Davis told me he was going to be a chief. How much was he going to get? You also have Delaney Walker. I mean, was A.J. Brown going to be out there? Absolutely. But he wasn't going to be a huge piece of your offense.
No, and they're talking about
not yet.
And they're talking about using Taywan Taylor more in the offense because they have a new offensive scheme and they like his size and his lack of size. They like his cutting ability from the inside. They want to focus more on the center of the field and everything as well. I agree with you. I think A.J. Brown, this kind of happened to Corey Davis, and I think it kind of slowed his development a little bit as he missed that rookie training camp with an injury, and it kind of set him back for his first season. I think this has the potential to be the same thing where it's just another setback for the Titans wide receiving corps. Don't worry, we're throwing the ball anyway. I'm with you, Martavius. He says he hopes it's nothing serious, and he's really looking forward to see A.J. Brown. I think him and Corey Davis on the outside, and then you have Humphreys and Taywan Taylor in a 4-wide set. I know we're talking about Tennessee here. It's not going to happen. But I can dream. That would be a scary thing. I'd like to see that. Those are some good receiving options.
It would be scary.
Absolutely. Or you could pull one of those guys out of the middle, whether it's Humphreys or Taylor, and then go put Delaney Walker out there in a running back. Things are looking pretty scary from the passing side of things in Tennessee.
You guys got talent.
The question is going to be, can we use it? As it always has been.
Probably
and the
not.
answer is probably not, yeah.
I want to get into Mike Daniels real quick. As much as I know you're probably sound on the fact that it's a lot of money given to this still a young man at 30, I don't see it being that. I think he probably could have got that, maybe even more somewhere else. I think this is a revenge possibility. He knows he gets to face the Packers twice each year. I think, and obviously in a one-year contract, I think this is what it's about. I think it's you made a mistake. I want to play you as much as I possibly can. The Bears aren't going to take him. And I'm blanking on the other team right now.
The Vikings.
The Vikings aren't going to take him.
Probably not with their money situation.
This is the best opportunity for him. I knew they weren't going to take him. I couldn't remember the team name for the life of me. But anyways, this is his best opportunity to play the team that should never have cut him. And he wants to prove him wrong.
I agree. I think you're getting a great run defender. And again, like I said, him and Snacks Harrison should have the middle of that cover. Trey Flowers, great run defender on the outside there. There's only been one way to run the ball against the Lions, and I'm excited to see it. I think this team, like I said, now all of a sudden this defensive line is shaping up pretty nicely.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be, I don't know, maybe Ian's right. Maybe this is the team to watch out for in the NFC North. Maybe this is the year the Lions bounce back.
He can defend himself right now.
Exactly. This is the I told you so
To
moment.
be honest with you, I sit there and I look at their draft pick, their tight end, their young tight end they took, and
Hawkinson.
Yeah, Hawkinson. And to be honest with you, it makes sense.
Well,
there's no way.
This was manna from heaven, Drew.
No
this
way
fell
you
into
would
your
have
lap.
known. There's no way you would have known Mike Daniels was getting cut and you were going to sign him. But this makes sense. Now it's like, oh, okay, that's why he took Hawkinson. All right.
What will really make sense if Matt Stafford can find a way to throw to one of his tight ends, because we've seen Ebron, we've seen Pettigrew, other first-round tight ends not really pan out with Stafford. So that's my question.
But Patricia's offense that he wants to run, the tight end is a valuable option in it. It's going to be different.
I totally agree. We'll move on. We'll talk about the Atlanta Falcons if you guys are ready.
I'm ready.
We'll start by talking about how they did last year, because this is a team, even though we criticize these one-dimensional squads, Drew, this is a team that, even though all they were doing was throwing the ball, they have an excuse, whereas other teams, like the Bengals, maybe not so much. I mean, you can't point to the Bengals' defense and say, man, if we had this one guy, we would have been a lot better. You can do that with the Falcons. If Deion Jones had played, we'd be talking about this Falcons defense being much better than the 28th it finished.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would sit there and say that they lost their number one and number two best player on their defense early on with Keno Neal going down with injury. Not saying he is the number two guy, but a lot of people could sit there and say that it was a significant issue. I know I was very high on the Falcons last year, coming off that Super Bowl loss, looking for a little bit of revenge. And not only did they lose people in their secondary, they also lost people offensively. It's still to go 7-9 in 2018 for all those losses. this team is going to be scary if they can stay healthy.
And more than that, I think they improved at the offensive coordinator spot. I think they got rid of Steve Sarkisian, who's been weighing down this defense for 2 years. Like I complain about all the time, I've never seen a guy fail upward as much as Sarkisian has. He got kicked out of the head coaching spot at USC for having drinking problems, showing up to a bunch of booster meetings, just trashed. And they're like, yeah, this is where we're supposed to be convincing people to give us millions of dollars, and you're walking in shit-faced already. Not a good look. And then he goes on to Alabama.
That's why I'm
exactly. Immediately rolls into Alabama. Alabama signs him, and then immediately, after not even really coaching, they sign him at the end of the year, was there for like 2 games as like a quality assurance guy, moves on and gets an offensive coordinator spot for the Falcons. I mean, like I said, failing upward, done at his best. I think we can all learn something from Steve Sarkisian. They finally got rid of him, and instead they signed Dirk Cotter, who, whether you like Dirk Cotter or not, he was the head coach and called the offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And last year, we all know Tampa could throw the rock, right?
Yeah, and they look good doing it.
Exactly. What's Atlanta got? A lot of weapons like Tampa does.
Arguably better.
And a better quarterback, yes.
Arguably better weapons.
And arguably better quarterback. You have a running back now.
That's not arguably.
They're hoping their offensive line is better, even though we're going to talk about them in a minute. This is a team that is poised to have a great offensive attack if Devontae Freeman stays healthy, Matt Ryan stays healthy, and Julio Jones just keep being himself. I mean, Calvin Ridley can just show up, and I feel like he'd be able to have a lot of success. Yeah. Mohamed Sanu can just show up. Hooper the same. As long as you have those guys firing 15 or 16 weeks a year, this team is going to be dangerous.
Martavis says he is so happy to have Cotter back. I think a lot of Atlanta Falcons are. To be honest, this is the hiring of, and I know Dirk Cotter was a head coach, but this is the hiring that a lot of teams that were lacking on offense, they should have reached out to Dirk and his camp and sit there and try to get this guy back into their area to help their offense. I mean, this is huge for the Atlanta Falcons, in my opinion. When you take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you have arguably the best passing offense in 2018 with how horrible of a season they had, this guy should have been one of the most called former head coaches during the offseason.
Tampa shouldn't have fired him. I was saying they should have given this guy another chance. He's the offensive coordinator. You didn't give him an offensive line. You didn't give him a running back with Peyton Barber. He had success with the weapons he had, and you fired him with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick. He made Ryan Fitzpatrick look like he was elite for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. I get it. Week 4, things kind of fell apart. Fitzpatrick went back to his old interception-throwing ways. Yeah. But that's not Dirk Cotter. You put Dirk Cotter with a good offense, and all of a sudden we're talking about this guy running one of the best offenses in the NFL. I think this is a mistake. I was saying before, I know you were a big Bruce Arians fan, but I was saying...
I still am.
And I like Bruce Arians, but I was still saying, when you run an offense like that, and you have that kind of success, you hire a good defensive coordinator and you live with it. The problem is Tampa Bay, short-sighted as they are, said, oh, well, Cotter's had a couple losing seasons, so it's time to get him out of here. It's not all on him. He can't put all the players on anything. You gotta look at the GM.
And I'm kind of with you too. I think honestly they kind of pulled the plug a little early on Dirk. To be honest with you, I don't think Bruce Arians was a hot name out there for coaching spots. Could he have been gone next year? Yeah, probably. But I'm agreeing with you. I think Dirk should have waited, or Tampa Bay
should have waited
on Dirk Cotter, no doubt about it. And let's try to talk about this offensive line. That when you look at it, the struggles were extremely on that right side, because the left side is anchored by Jake Matthews, and also right and center with Alex Mack. They don't really have a lot of issues over there, and they shored it up a little bit more with the addition that I am forgetting that man's name on the guard side.
They added James Carpenter. They also added Jamon Brown, who was expected to play and start possibly at guard with Anthony Levitre out. We were expecting to have 2 new guards coming in through free agency. But instead, they opted to go with Chris Lindstrom in the draft. So nobody knows who's going to get the nod here. I think the Falcons are in a good spot where they can decide on who of these guys is the most talented and roll with that. Because now you have 3 guys for 2 spots. You can leave the odd man out, whether it's the rookie, whether it's the veteran. It does not matter what these guys are being paid. The only thing that does matter is that you get the best form of the offensive line out on the field at once. What's going on, Sharif? Good to see you, man. Talking about this offensive line here, it's a rebuild. And in 2017, they went from very, very good, and like we said about the Colts in last episode, Drew, you can go from being very, very good like the Falcons were in 2017 and have a bad year, whether it's injury, whether it's guys just not performing well. The offensive line is one of those things that you can't bet on it being elite year in and year out. They struggled last year. Now they're retooling. They're bringing in a bunch of new guys, and you can see how much the commitment is to keeping Matt Ryan safe in this pocket.
Yeah.
Now at 32, 33, I think he's 33 at this point. The key and the focus for Atlanta needs to be keeping this guy safe and keeping him healthy over these next few years, because you want him to go and have a Tom Brady-like career where he can make it to 40, where he can get close to that. He can be like Drew Brees and he can play to 39 or 40 years old. If you let him take hits at this point in his career, this is where it really gets short. You can deal with it as a young man. You can't really deal with that when you get to the mid of the career.
Yeah, you're right. But the way he plays, the way Matt Ryan is protected by the Atlanta Falcons, they obviously focused it very huge when it came. Would you like me to get up? And
No,
go?
I'll get it. Keep talking.
Okay, when they came into the draft, going for Lindstrom and McGarry, which more than likely are going to start that right hand side of Matt Ryan in that offensive line. To be honest, if I had to choose one side in a passing offense, it'd be the right hand side with a right-handed quarterback that's going to have those young rookies.
Which one's the bomb?
The one, the red.
All right.
This is, in my opinion, this is the right move. This is how you fix this offensive line. Is it going to be the Colts offensive line? No, it's not. But it's going to be better because it was god awful on the right hand side.
No, it was. It was absolutely. Devontae Freeman also got hurt. With him coming back, you're going to be looking at the Falcons having much more of a running game. For as long as they bet on Coleman, as long as they wanted Coleman to be the guy, he never lived up to that hype. In my opinion, I think when you had that breakout from Devontae Freeman, they should have leaned into it and said, this is our starting running back until something happens to him. Instead, they kept trying to put Coleman in the game. They kept trying to keep him involved. He was getting 10 carries a game, and Freeman was only getting like 12 to 14 touches. And that was becoming an issue. This is early on. I know, I had him in fantasy. I was butthurt about it every year. I was like, when you have a guy who's outperforming the other one, and this is why Coleman is gone now and Freeman is still there, despite what they played favorites, and in my opinion, they lost out on.
We have
on
such
some
different views when it comes to this.
They played favorites early on with Coleman. I think they wanted Tevin Coleman to be the starting running back.
Yeah, because they took draft capital and made Coleman the more priority thing until he got hurt.
But here's the
and
secret
when
in
they
the
started,
NFL. Real quick, let me address that, and then I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
Okay.
When you take draft capital, all that is out the window if you're a good team as soon as the season starts. As soon as it starts, it doesn't matter what you're being paid. It doesn't matter what round you came into the draft. It doesn't matter if you're undrafted. All that matters is what can you give to the team. Freeman was giving more, and yet they kept giving Coleman these chances so that he could hopefully take it away from Freeman.
This is Arthur Blank. This is not, the Titans organization where the owner's not involved. This is literally...
I don't know. Bud Adams was pretty involved. He's not here anymore.
But my point is that they went out and drafted Tevin Coleman. This was their future at running back. They're excited that Freeman succeeded, but there was never a chance they're going to put Tevin Coleman on a shelf and watch him age. They were going to sit there and play him as much as possible. And the reason why they let him go, in my opinion, is because last year when Freeman did get hurt, and he's had injury issues, let's not forget, out of the two, I'd rather have Coleman if I'm going to have someone on the field because Freeman's been hurt a lot more than Coleman has. But they're both injury prone. They're not perfect by any means. Coleman had a chance to be, hey, you're it. You're the number one guy. Go out and prove us wrong. Prove us why wrong that we're sharing the rock with you and Freeman. And he totally flopped.
Yeah, it only took him 4 years to figure that out. The problem is you were getting better numbers out of Freeman all along the way. At some point, you got to say, this is the better guy. I know they get hurt. I'm not saying Coleman should have not been involved.
You play fantasy just as much as I do.
Go ahead.
You're going to sit there and tell me that Freeman was taken way in front of Coleman. You knew they were splitting the rock. You knew they were going to share it. Yes, Freeman went first because on the depth chart he is the first running back, but Coleman didn't fall short behind that.
No, but I'm saying it should have been. This should have been more carries in Freeman's hands. I get it from the fantasy perspective. You're like, Tevin Coleman still had value. But when you're working with these guys in practice every day, when you're working with them, you can tell who's the more talented guy. I think Devontae Freeman's always been the more talented guy. For whatever reason, they have wanted to get Coleman on the field. They've wanted Tevin Coleman to take over the starting spot. And then, like you said, this year was the breaking point, where now you get to carry the rock for, 12 or 13 weeks this year, and they're like, he's not there.
No,
he's not the guy. And credit to them for finally admitting that, because some teams, especially when you're a bad team, stick with the guy that you like or the coaches like or whoever, their guys. They finally threw their hands up and said, look, regardless of what we think about Devontae Freeman, we know he's the better running back in the NFL today, and that's who we have to go with.
All right, Sharif, before we get into the Atlanta Falcons defense, I got one last question for Jake. Because you're so on board on making Freeman that number one back, is the backfield for the Atlanta Falcons better or worse without Tevin Coleman?
It is worse, but that is an incredibly slanted question you just asked me. Here's what I would say. Freeman should be getting about 75% of the touches. And I get what you're saying. He has injury concerns. That's why I'm saying you still split about 25% of the touches with him. You just let it ride as long as you can. If you have those games towards the end of the season where you're like, we're going to the playoffs, maybe those are the games he takes off and you see a healthier dose of Coleman. But Coleman should have been coming into this as the number 2 guy. He should have been the C.J. Anderson to a Todd Gurley for an entire season. You should not have seen that even split because for years in Atlanta, it was almost a 50-50 split when you have the one guy who's tearing it up and the other guy who's still lagging behind him. I get it. Coleman had some good runs.
Coleman could be the better receiver, too.
No, not a better receiver. Coleman is a good receiver, but he's not better than Devontae Freeman.
He was out there more for the passing downs than Freeman was.
Yards, I know, and he shouldn't have been. This is another point here. If you're going to use Coleman, being the bigger back, I think the problem is this kid got Adrian Peterson. I don't want to harp on this forever. This kid got comparisons to Adrian Peterson coming out of college and early on in his career. They're like, man, this guy has it all. He runs hard. He's a little more upright. He catches the ball out of the backfield. This guy could be AP. And the Falcons, I think, heard that and said, so let's get him the ball and see if he turns into AP. He might have. He absolutely might have. I don't know who's in charge of making these calls.
Before we move on to their defense, let me just be completely honest here, guys. Freeman is the better back out of the two. Coleman, he's the
better receiver, too. If I had to pick a guy to be a scat back, Freeman is the better scat
Freeman
back.
looks like he should be. But
Freeman's
Coleman,
Jamal Charles 2.0. I mean, not as good as Jamal Charles.
Let's pump the brakes on that one, all right?
I know. He's got that sainthood that it comes with every former Kansas City Chief, but he's that same type of game style where he is so quick on his feet that you can throw him the ball and he can make stuff happen after the play.
You're going to have to find a
Coleman's not that guy.
You're going to have to find a different player to compare him to.
I know, because we can't talk about... Never mind, I'm not going to say that.
No. You cannot sit there and tell me that Devontae Freeman looks anything like Jamal Charles in playing.
Yeah.
What?
Receiving the ball out of the backfield? Yeah. He does just
Coleman's
as much
a better receiver.
Then Freeman? You're
yes.
smoking crack, Drew. You're smoking crack. Freeman can catch. I'm not saying he's a bum.
Maybe he's never out there for those receiving downs.
No, because usually Freeman gets those early downs, and then they put Coleman
All
in.
right, guys, who's ever watching right now, I got to know, who do you think is a better receiver for the Atlanta Falcons?
Feel free.
We want to know. It's got to be decided. Is it Tevin Coleman or was it Devontae Freeman? Obviously, in my opinion, before you go on to say your part, when you have a passing down, it would seem to always be Tevin Coleman out there on the field.
And what have I been saying? They've been misusing Devontae Freeman. I'm not arguing that that's the way it's been, but I'm saying it should have been different because I think Devontae Freeman is 100% the better receiver. Who moves him 20-20 all the time, and then they put Coleman in there to steal a touchdown? Like you said, we both play fantasy. We know how this goes.
Oh, I know. I'm right there with you.
Now, Jeremy's saying he thinks Coleman's the better receiver, but I think
not
Jeremy's
by much,
wrong.
though.
I think Jeremy's wrong.
Jeremy would punch you in the face.
Normally respect your opinion, but I think this one's got to go to Devontae Freeman. I think we're, like, when it comes to yards after catch, I think we're underestimating what Devontae Freeman can actually do. He's the guy that moves him 20-20 that you dump the ball off to when everyone's covered down the field, and then he makes something happen. Coleman's the guy who comes in, steals touchdowns, and puts up 18 points in fantasy, and everyone's like, this is a good running back.
What did he do to you? What did he do to you?
He stole touches from my number one running back. It's okay. Look,
all right, let's talk.
Whichever way you want to go with this.
Yeah.
Both guys, I still believe, have talent.
He says he's punching the screen. Don't do that because he might punch me for
right there.
For revenge, he might punch me back. We got to get into this defense. This is what really, truly hurt the Atlanta Falcons in 2018.
Whatever year it is.
In their season. I mean, that's complete honesty. They had no issues, even with Freeman being out. They had no issues putting up points when they needed to, and even with a terrible right-handed side of their offensive line, I'm still here. This defense is what struggled. And, of course, we all want to point fingers at the fact that Jones and Neal got hurt.
Let's ask the Atlanta fan. No offense, Jeremy. You're still my guy, all right? You made a lot of good points. I know you know what's up. I think you just missed the at-bat on this one. Everyone strikes out once in a while. Martavius, the Falcons fan here, says, as much as he loves them both, it's Freeman. The prosecution rests. I've said all they need to say. Martavius is on my side. I think I won this one.
You didn't win anything.
I think I won this one.
It's 1-1.
Martavius has closed this case, all right?
All right, Jeremy, for real, punch him in the face.
Sorry, continue. The defense was atrocious.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to point fingers at the fact that Jones and Neal weren't there, and that's the reason why this team struggled. And yeah, let's be honest, that's probably a huge reason. But is that the only reason? I mean, is that the only reason that this defense struggled?
That's a big part of it. We saw Grady Jarrett take that step forward.
I say this question, but I say yes.
Yeah. I mean, we saw Grady Jarrett take the step forward. We saw him kind of, even though I don't necessarily want to say he's the best defensive tackle in football, we all know he's not as big of a name as guys like Aaron Donald and even guys like Jarrell Casey or Fletcher Cox. They're not as big as these other guys are at the defensive spot, but he stepped up at a time where nobody else was stepping up for Atlanta. They've paid him. He's coming back. If we can get another year like this out of Jarrett, and then you have Jones and Keanu Neal coming back, we're going to be talking about this defense taking major strides forward.
I got to stop you right there. Ivy said Coleman is better.
Et tu, Brute? Why don't you just drive the knife in my heart right now? Coleman is not the better receiver. I'm sorry. He's just not. He may be able to, you could say hands, whatever you want to say. When it comes to yards after catch, no one is slipperier. Is that even a word? Slipperier.
You made it one.
Than Devontae Freeman. I think Devontae Freeman's that guy who catches the ball over the middle and slides around. Like, nobody can get their hands on this guy. Yeah, does he have the same power as Coleman? No, he doesn't. He's not the guy that runs you over, but he's the guy that kind of squirts out from that little 3 to 5 yard reception range and goes and makes something happen. I think we're sleeping on his receiving ability. I do. And he's not a carry the load guy. I know I don't want to go too far into this point. They need another running back who's going to back this guy up because, like Christian McCaffrey, and I complain about all the time, I don't think he has the frame to carry the ball 3 to 4 or to touch the ball 300 to 400 times a year.
Yeah.
You need a Coleman back there, but this guy needs 25 to 30% of the touches.
Smith isn't doing it for you.
No, I think we both agree on that.
Sheree says, "Isn't Quinn the defensive coach?" Yes, he is the defensive coordinator. He is going to be doing all the defensive calls, and as I'm right there with Martavius. He says, yes, thank God. To be honest with you, I
think you're talking about the defense. Remember, Martavius was the one who agreed with me before. If you're going the Coleman thing, Martavius is on my side.
He's saying yes to Sharif's question.
With
Dan Quinn being the defensive coach.
Gotcha.
And I am a complete agreement with you, man.
Yeah, I'll drink to that. Sorry.
I'm a complete agreement with you, man. It was the reason why Dan Quinn is the head coach. There's no doubt about it. There is going to be some kind of defensive coordinator staff in line, in the sense of helping with personnel and stuff like that.
Because you want your head coach focused on the game scenarios.
Exactly, right. But there's no doubt about it. It's so much better for Atlanta to have Dan Quinn calling them plays.
Speaking of driving the dagger in, Ivy got me before, and now Sharif's hit me with Tannehill is better than Mariota. Yeah, I agree.
Do you want me to help you pull out some of those daggers?
There's a lot. They're stacking up. It's the Ides of March in here, man. I'm Julius Caesar right now. But I got to say this. Sharif, Tannehill is a better quarterback. He's done a lot more with a lot less to work with. I think when you look at things, he doesn't have the same athleticism, even though he has some athleticism. He's not as athletic as Mariota is. But at the end of the day, you pay the quarterback to throw the rock. As a Ravens fan, I think, again, you're the perfect case study of can we have a quarterback that's not as good as throwing as other quarterbacks. I think Tannehill's the better thrower, and it's just going to come down to, do the Titans have the balls to say, this has been our guy for 4 years? He's not our guy anymore. I question him. Organizationally, we haven't been those guys in the past to say we're going to let the best guy play. It's always been about our favorite guy gets to play, just like I complained about with Freeman. Our favorite guy gets the touches.
I don't think it was... okay.
That's all right. I just threw that jab in there.
We can't get back into it. Hey, let's just say this. The past. We're moving forward, and Freeman's the guy, all right?
He is now. Yeah, I hope he stays healthy.
Now you get Ito Smith and God knows who else.
And everybody else. Yeah, exactly.
And Sharif throws Tannehill's wife is hot, and yes, she is hot.
But, on the reverse, you don't find a lot of ugly wives married to NFL players. When you got money, it seems to make up for whatever you look like. Even the offensive linemen, they're usually hauling in some babes.
Shh, don't tell my wife that.
I know. Yeah, when you got the money. Wait, never mind. We're not going into that. Nathan also is breaking some news. He says Bobby Wagner, new 3-year, $54 million. Good move if it happened. We're always loath to trust the comments for stuff because we have been burned in the past. We don't want to break any news. But if Nathan's right, and he usually is reliable, I think this is a good move for Seattle.
No. Yeah.
But we're not talking about Seattle now. We're talking about their old D coordinator,
if
Dan
this
Quinn.
is true,
we trust you.
They signed literally the best
only as far as we can throw you
for the next 3 years in the NFL.
I agree. Keep the defense together. Keep the anchor there. we'll move forward and talk about the rest of this team before we go into the schedule.
We never even talked about their defense.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about the rest of the team. We've talked offense for 45 minutes now. We got to talk defense here a little bit. Before we move into the schedule, guys.
Yeah.
This defense on paper absolutely atrocious last year. Everyone's going to point to the injuries, but I still think we've got some concerns. They were 28th overall, 27th against the pass, 25th against the run, and 25th in scoring. So on paper, you're bad in every category.
Yeah.
Even with those guys coming back, you're probably not looking at a top 10 defense, Drew. You're probably looking somewhere around 15 to me. I think on paper, you've got guys like Robert Alford, cornerback leaving, Brian Poole, cornerback leaving, Justin Bethel, also cornerback leaving. For a defense that already couldn't defend the pass, I was concerned when I saw these big names coming off there and getting big contracts from other guys, from other teams.
These were big names, but these weren't their number 1 and number 2 guys. They still have Trufant. They still have Oliver. And they went out in this draft and drafted a bunch of defensive backs. Now, will they pan out? We don't know. But I think Poole's their biggest loss. But they didn't want to sit there and spend that money there. They need to focus on their offensive line. They need to focus on making their offensive line better. That's why they went out there and got Carpenter, and they got Brown, and they went out and paid for a blocking tight end and Stalker. This is what they.
And let's not forget, just like you called me out before, I got to call you out now here. When I said Brian Poole signing that $3 million contract to move off, you were like, "Oh, this is nothing. I'm not worried about that." And I was like, "This is a value deal." No, they're getting Brian Poole here to play well.
I just said that was their biggest loss of their second.
Yeah, now and before when this happened, you were like, "Oh, who cares?
It's not that big
terrible."
of a deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to
I actually think it's Alford. I think Alford got the biggest contract for a reason. I think he's their biggest loss. I don't think you're wrong. I think Brian Poole is really good from the slot, and that is a huge commodity.
That's what you need when you have a 1 and 2 corner.
I agree with that.
You got
but I think Alford
Oliver?
Totally. From a skill perspective, I got to say Alford I think is the bigger loss. I think having him as the third guy would have been nice to have in Atlanta. But now he's gone.
But the biggest loss in the secondary was Neal last year. The fact that they're bringing him back.
With an injury, yeah. I'm talking about, like, departures.
But I know. But, I mean, let's not forget he is the quarterback of that secondary. To bring him back, if he can stay healthy, it'll be big for that. Still, you got to remember, Trufant is not that old. He's still a young corner in the league. Has a lot of success so far, but still is still green underneath under his wings a little bit. What's this, year 4 of him?
If this defense turns into a top 15 squad with the way Atlanta puts points on the board, they're going to win some games. They're going to be a threat. And we're betting on that, right? We're betting on Keanu Neal playing all season. We're betting on Deion Jones coming back and playing all season. We're betting on the Atlanta Falcons.
I hope so.
Having more health than they had in 2018 because they went from being a playoff contender to one of those teams that would just surprise teams and put up 48 points and win 48-46. They won 7 games last year. Before we go into the schedule here, Drew, final thoughts on all this. Did they do enough in free agency to get this defense back to where it needs to be to win games?
Oh, it's so hard to tell. I think the biggest thing here is having Dan Quinn to start calling these defensive plays. And to be honest with you guys, if you are any fan at all of the defensive side of the ball, watch Atlanta games and watch Deion Jones play his position. He is a stud. He is tons of fun to watch. I wish he was wearing a Kansas City uniform.
He might be the most important defender to a defense. Because you look at what they were in 17 and then you look at what they were in 18 without any major changes. I really do think this guy might be the single most important player to a single defense in the NFL. Deion Jones.
And he's tons of fun to watch.
He is. Absolutely.
He's so much fun to watch. It was disappointing last year to not see him.
Absolutely. So if they survive, we're talking about the Falcons being good. So a lot of our rankings here are going to come with us assuming these guys are going to make it through the season marginally healthy, right? Right. And Nathan says, Falcons are the team that you want to vote for Matt Ryan and Jones. I'm with you. I think he meant root for them, but yeah, I'm with you. They're one of those teams that they're fun to watch. If you're not an Atlanta fan or if you're not an NFC South fan, more importantly, you like watching the Falcons on TV because they're high-flying, they throw the ball a lot, Julio makes great plays, Matt Ryan can distribute the ball, and then they play some defense on top of it. Usually you get one or the other, right? Usually you're Indianapolis and you throw, or you're the Tennessee Titans and you play defense, but you can't run any offense. These guys can do both.
Yeah,
and
no doubt
if
about
they're
it.
healthy, they can be good on both sides.
Yeah, and Martavius says he's glad that we locked up Jones being Atlanta. Man, I'm jealous. Honestly, I mean he's fun. Will he always make the best play? No, but guess what? He'll always be around that ball. The way that guy flies, it's something who has not. If any of you guys out there have not watched the Atlanta Falcons play, you need to watch him. And if I can remember correctly, I think his number's 45.
If you get the NFL package,
Sorry if
he's the guy to watch.
I slaughtered that Martavius, but I'm pretty sure he's number 45. You got to watch this guy. He's a stud.
Absolutely. We'll move into the schedule here. It's tough. It is tough early on. When you talk about the Vikings on the road to start week 1, and then you get the Eagles at home and the Colts on the road after that, and then the Titans, we hope. These first 3 weeks, at the very least, are going to be a struggle. All 3 of these teams are going to think they're playoff teams. And I think the Titans think they're a playoff team too. But all 3 of these teams at the top are going to reasonably have expectations to make it back to the playoffs. On the road, we see it as a loss to start out week 1 against the Vikings. I think on the road, you're still trying to gel a little bit. You're still trying to figure things out on offense. You've got a lot of guys who have missed a lot of time due to injury coming back to face a Vikings team that hasn't changed much in a couple of years. Minus Kirk Cousins, minus a couple offensive linemen, let's face it, needed to change. The Vikings are returning a lot of those defensive guys. I think this might be the week Atlanta stumbles out of the gate a little bit because they have a new offensive system with Dirk Cotter coming back. They have a new offensive game plan they want to run. Devontae Freeman hasn't played a lot with them. I think the Vikings will have enough between the ground game they want to put out there and the passing game they can do to keep up and beat the Falcons.
Frank, I'm glad you could join us, man. To be honest, when I look at week 1, I see them going to the Minnesota Vikings, and I think about that defense, and I think about the receiving options that Kirk Cousins has to throw the ball to. It's not that the Falcons are a better team than the Minnesota Vikings, but I think in week 1, in my opinion, the Minnesota Vikings have more to prove in week 1 than almost any team in the NFL this year in week 1, because what were we saying a year ago before the season happened about the Minnesota Vikings?
It's the master class of the NFL, right? It's the cream of the crop.
This is a team that must find itself in the NFC Championship, getting ready to go in the Super Bowl. This is the team that we said that about. I know we did multiple times because you looked at
still believe in them, right?
And we looked on the paper, we're like, they have to be. And it's not that we want to sit there and knock the Atlanta Falcons in week 1, because trust me, after we get done with this schedule, we did not think low of them.
No,
we just think.
Stay tuned, Martavius. We like the Falcons.
We just think the Vikings have to win game 1, regardless if it's the Falcons or anybody.
Now, Nathan said Titans is a playoff team, and then he threw a bunch of emojis at me that said no way. But in their minds, they think they're a playoff team. The Titans do. And I think everyone, weeks 1 through 5, are going to be assuming they're a playoff team. I mean, I didn't mention Houston on the road in that week 5 game, but these are 5 legitimate playoff contenders, even if not everybody makes it. These are 5 legitimate playoff contenders in the first 5 weeks. You don't get a break as Atlanta.
You guys are only 1 year off of being in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, and it's been the same record. It's been 9-7 across the board. So they're going to think in their minds, like, hey, we're a game or 2 away. We're Marcus playing against Indianapolis away from being in the playoffs, because they even managed to hang around in that game with Blaine Gabbert. I think the Titans are going to consider themselves a playoff team. I think Houston's going to consider them as playoff teams. But let's talk about the Eagles.
Sure.
Nobody doubts this is a playoff team, right? In their minds, on paper, in the media's perception.
They only got better?
Exactly. Everyone looks at the Eagles and says, this is a playoff team. So you're coming off a loss week 1, and then you have to bounce back and play the Eagles week 2. But we actually see this as a win, going back to Atlanta. The battle of the birds, man. Eagles versus Falcons. I think Atlanta can pull this one off as a bit of a shock, because as much as the Eagles are good up front and they're going to make some pressure and maybe hit Matt Ryan more than Falcons fans want to see, I don't see this back end, minus Ronald Darby, stopping all those weapons for Atlanta.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And I'm sure Martavius can remember this, but this is one of my favorite matchups in the past when you think about the Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons playing, where you got Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick going up against each other. Is this a new kind of rival?
Well, they're not running as much as those guys. McNabb wasn't a runner.
Is this a new rival now with Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan? I mean, I'm
jealous of the quarterback names.
Yeah, to be honest, this is going to be an exciting game, but we fully believe the Falcons can get a win here.
Yeah, I think so too. It'll be the home debut. They'll be fired up. They'll be looking at week 1 and saying, man, we probably should have closed out the game against the Vikings. Here's our chance. I don't see this Eagles secondary keeping up with them. We saw Avonte Maddox Their corner in Philadelphia, their second corner, not Ronald Darby, struggle mightily in the playoffs. I think he's the guy to target here. I think this is the game Calvin Ridley maybe takes advantage of that weaker second corner some, and we see Austin Hooper make inroads against weaker tight ends. We see Devontae Freeman, a tough guy to guard when you're talking about not as good linebacking core, matching up with Devontae Freeman. Again, I'm the guy who says Devontae Freeman can catch out of the backfield. This is the game where he does it.
Let me just tell you, I don't think he can't catch the ball. I just think Coleman's better.
Let me just tell you, I'm going to get him in fantasy before Drew does.
Take him.
I will.
He's yours.
He's mine every year because I always bet on him.
You enjoy him in the 4
and
games
1 year,
season.
it works. We'll move forward. We see the Eagles game as a win.
Yes, Martavius says he's looking forward to that game, and Jeremy says the Falcons better win against the She-Eagles.
The Falcons better win one of the two. If they win one of the two, you're on pace. You're where you need to be. You don't want to start the season 0-2, despite how tough the schedule is, because then you get the Colts. Everybody's darling, but I think they have the firepower and the muscle to beat a team like Indianapolis. Pump the brakes, Colts fans. I know you showed up for the last episode, but
Jeremy's already saying out there that they lose against the Colts in Indianapolis.
But Martavi's saying it won't be easy, but they got it.
I think he's talking about the Eagles.
Well, I think I'm going to apply this to the Indianapolis game because I'm 100% in agreement. It won't be easy, but I think they got it. I think this is going to be the game of the week, and I say that a lot, but this is going to be one of those games that everybody's going to be scoring. Because both of these defenses aren't going to be set up to stop 2 and 3 and 4 receivers with great quarterbacks throwing the ball. You could argue whether Matt Ryan's great. You could argue whether the receivers in Indianapolis are great. But this is those games. This is the type of game where it's not going to matter.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And one of the Atlanta Falcons have in their offensive scheme is the fact that their number 1 and number 2 and number 3 receivers should honestly be switched a little bit.
Right.
You should honestly see Sanu be at number 3, but the fact that they don't put him there and they put Ridley in that slot position kind of hurts a lot of defensive teams because, yes, everyone in the NFL knows you need to have 3 corners, but usually that third corner, unless it's a luxury, something like where we see the Vikings who have 3 good corners, that third person is usually the worst out of the 3.
They have 3 if Mike Hughes stays alive, and we like Mike Hughes, but he's been injury prone.
But my point across is the fact that teams like the Eagles, the Colts, and even the Titans struggle in that position.
The Titans don't, but those other two do.
Oh, they don't?
Adoree Jackson, first-round pick. He's like an 83 in Madden, so that's how you know he's good.
Oh,
yeah, we have 3. We have 3.
Is that how that?
We have 4.
Oh, we're a Madden.
Actually,
we're Madden ranking
excuse
team now,
you.
or game or show now. What am I
we're not, but he's good. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about this Colts game here. This is going to be.
We can talk about the Titans in a minute, okay?
We can. Yeah. Okay. You're the one who brought him up. Going into Indianapolis here, it's going to be high scoring.
You brought
It's
him
going to
up.
be a shootout. I'm continuing. I'm continuing. It's going to be a shootout. We think Andrew Luck's going to put up a lot of points in this game. Deion Jones is going to be struggling to keep up with what they do with Marlon Mack, I think. It's going to be the question of can you make Indianapolis one-dimensional? I think with the defense, Keanu Neal, Marlon Mack, Grady Jarrett on this defense, you need to take that sort of spread game out of this. You can't have sweeps to the right or to the left. Set up the running game to the outside because if you can do that and then they can throw over the middle, this is going to be a hard team to beat. But I think they have enough firepower in this defense that they're going to be able to contain Indianapolis' run game a little bit more than some other teams do.
I felt like you said that wrong, but I'm going to agree with you. Okay. Deion Jones is not going to struggle with Marlon Mack. He's not going to struggle with any of those tight ends. He could cover any of that position. The only problem is there's only one Deion Jones on the field.
There is.
And that's where you're going to struggle because he likes to use Andrew Luck likes to use his tight ends.
Well,
he likes to use his backs.
Let me clarify then. It's going to be a struggle, but they're up to the task.
Okay.
Because I think it's going to be difficult. I think Indianapolis, the way they throw, it's not easy to take that run game out of the equation, especially when you got as small and as quick of a guy as Marlon Mack is, and then you have the couple power backs and Wilkins and Hines behind him. It's going to be tough to take this running game out of the game, but I think they have the weapons to do it. I think Grady Jarrett's going to disrupt in the middle. That's going to slow down those big backs trying to charge up the middle, and you have the linebackers kind of fill in and make the tackles that you need closer to the line of scrimmage, and then you're going to have Deion Jones to run sideline to sideline to keep up with the faster guy in Mack. That's what I meant when I said it's going to be a struggle.
Okay.
If you take that out of the equation, the Falcons, pound for pound, will beat the Colts.
Yeah, and we have it as a win. And then going into week 4, they find themselves in Atlanta against the Nashville.
Tennessee, the whole state. We get the whole state.
Oh, we get the whole state.
We do. The Tennessee Titans. Before we go into that, Martavi says it's going to be a dogfight, but he thinks they can win against the Colts and against the Colts, and it's not going to be a great game regardless. I think it'll be a great game for your offense. Because I think, just like the Colts, you guys have a great linebacker. You have a couple guys up front. You have a safety or two that we like. These are two teams built very similar. But am I going to bet on Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and Mohamed Sanu before T.Y. Hilton, a rookie in Paris Campbell, and Devin Funchess? You better believe I'm going to do it. I think this comes down to weapons. And I think Indianapolis probably comes up just a little bit shy because their weapons are just a little bit shy of what Atlanta has.
And living here in Tennessee, around Nashville area, it should not be the Tennessee Titans because there's a lot of Atlanta fans around this area. But what I was going to get at was around a Nashville team that travels well is what I was going to say into Atlanta. But that does not
only 3 hours away, baby.
That's not going to make a
load
difference.
up the car.
That's what I was going to say. I wasn't going to say the Nashville Titans, but it's okay. You can assume.
I do all the time. I think you've said Nashville Titans in the past.
One time
I just had to correct you.
Oh, well, we're picking up.
Had to correct you.
We're going to bring up the past.
We can't let that stay.
Let's keep bringing up the past, baby.
All right, we'll keep talking about this.
Yeah.
Whether the Titans travel or not, Atlanta's selling enough tickets. I don't think it's going to matter too much. This is still going to be Atlanta Stadium, right? This isn't a bad team. You can go take over the stadium as Titans fans, traveling Titans fans. This is a tough game because unlike the Colts, this is a team that's going to want to run and play smash mouth football. They're going to want to play good defense. But these are the games the Titans tend to lose. It's teams who are able to spread the ball around, put 3 or 4 receiving options on the field, and then they just tend to struggle with high-flying offenses.
You've got a good third corner.
We do, but we can't answer back. So when they put up 22 points, we're putting up 12. And you can't beat a high-flying offense like that. So these are the games where the Titans tend to struggle.
Jeremy says, Tennessee is a great value version of the Houston Oilers.
Well, we haven't made it to the Super Bowl yet. Well, I mean, I guess we did as Titans the first year they were here, but in some sense, sure. Yeah, I mean, we're still stuck in 1985 where we're running the ball all the time and we're playing defense. I don't know. I still like the defense, the running game kind of setup, but there's no denying that we struggle against good quarterbacks and we struggle against teams that want to put 3 and 4 receivers out there and then throw it to Devontae Freeman and burn us over the middle. Is this going to be an interesting game? Yeah, because it's strength versus strength. This is the Titans' defense going up against great offense, and then it's the Titans' running game going up against a Falcons team that's going to have some questions to answer in their running defense. But I'm going to bet on Matt Ryan over Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to bet on the quarterback. I think that might be the difference here.
Yeah, no,
because you can have a great pass defense, but nobody stops the great guys forever in the NFL. Nobody.
All right, moving forward, we got Week 5. They go on the road against the Houston Texans. We see this as a loss for the Atlanta Falcons. Even though you got a very weak offensive line that they're trying to rebuild down in Houston, they still have a lot of players on that defensive line and, you know, in their linebacking core. The secondary is a little weak. But we kind of see this as a shootout. And does really anyone ever stop
DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah.
See, I already knew. You didn't have to ask because they don't. Nobody stops DeAndre Hopkins. The question is, can you equal him? I think this might be a little bit of the changing of the guard in the NFL where you see DeAndre Hopkins overshadow Julio Jones for what might be the first time in his career. I mean, coming out of Alabama, Julio Jones has been arguably the best receiver since he was a rookie or in that top 3,
right.
top 5 kind of scenario since he was a rookie. This might be the game where he gets a little overshadowed by another guy because – like you said, nobody on this defense is matched up with DeAndre Hopkins. But we do know that's going to be the game plan. We know they're going to be like, time to stop Hopkins and whatever else happens, happens. I also think if this game had come at Week 2 and the Titans were Week 5 or the Eagles were Week 5 or the Colts were Week 5, after this stretch of games, we'd say it's a loss for any one of these teams. Because this is a brutal, brutal stretch. If you get out of this 3-2 like we have predicted, and Martavius is with us saying that they can beat the Titans here, in Week 4, if you get out of this 5-game stretch 3-2, you're on the way to making the playoffs. Because this is just absolutely brutal. You're getting all those tough games out of the way early on. Hopefully it's while they're healthy, and hopefully they're gelling early from the season for Falcons fans.
Yeah, but their division is tough, and even though they get a couple easy games, it's not riddled. Unfortunately, they're in the division with the Saints, who went to the NFC Championship game, which means they got to play a little bit of tougher schedule. At least it always seems.
Falcons fans, they're glad that that's the case. But yeah, no, I agree.
But this is not an easy. Even though in Week 6 they go on the road to Arizona, we see that as a win, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think Kyler Murray and a high-flying offense that the Cardinals are trying to put on this field might give a little bit of trouble to this Atlanta's defense.
Yeah, and they have a good pass rush in Chandler Jones, and now they also have Terrell Suggs. They have guys in the defensive front who are going to cause havoc in this backfield for this new offensive line, for this young offensive line.
Yeah.
This might be the coming-of-age story for offensive linemen, where maybe they have a good game against Chandler Jones, and Terrell Suggs gets 2 or 3 sacks. Or maybe they shut down Terrell Suggs and Chandler Jones gets back there a couple times. As long as both of these guys don't get back there consistently and disrupt this passing game, I still see this as a win for the Falcons, especially because this is the last week without Patrick Peterson. They're missing their best corner. Julio Jones is likely to run roughshod over this team because you don't have a guy like Patrick Peterson who can match up with him. Talk about an old SEC matchup, right? Former LSU versus former Alabama player.
Right.
I think they came out either the same year or very close to each other. This is the throwback. Unfortunately, we won't get to see it because Patrick Peterson's out for the first 6 weeks.
Martavius Suggs is not retired. He is in Arizona. And
we thought this was going to be Nick Bosa, Terrell Suggs is the rotational guy, or at least I did, and then Chandler Jones. This, to me, could have been one of the best pass rushes in football overnight. They chose to change things up at quarterback at Kyler Murray. And if it works out, they're geniuses. If it doesn't, well, we're not going to see Cliff Kingsbury for forever, right? Isn't that usually the way things go? If it doesn't work, you're an idiot. If it does, you're a genius.
Right.
So,
Week 7, they're going to find themselves back in Atlanta, but they're going to be facing the losing Super Bowl team, or the team of the Super Bowl, in the LA Rams. This is going to be a tough game.
oh, it's going to be very tough. Just like we've said before with the Falcons, watch for those high-flying offenses. But I, at least, believe the Rams have taken a step back on defense. Losing guys like Joyner, despite Weddle coming in. I like Weddle, but Weddle is not playing with the Ravens anymore. I think we're going to see his numbers take a dip. And Aaron Donald is still the best defensive tackle or best defensive player in football, but one guy doesn't make a defense. Even though we've been saying that about Deion Jones all day long, that he's made the Falcons' defense, one guy alone, with Aaron Donald all last year, as much as we love him, this is the 20th or so rated defense.
I can't say that.
That was a lot to decompress.
No, I just can't sit there and say that one guy doesn't make a defense when you have someone like Aaron Donald. This is going to be a tough game. To be honest with you, this is what I see this game being before we go into these comments, is this is literally going to be the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Rams game of last year. I think this game is going to be one of those 40-50 games where it's the last team that touched the ball that wins this game.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be the game of the week. And I say that I've been saying that a lot lately, but I think Falcons-Rams, I don't think anyone's playing any defense in this. We're talking about teams that were rated in the 20s in their defense last year, didn't get particularly better, even though the Falcons are going to come back healthy. I think both of these teams are going to be scoring points. This could be like the Chiefs-Rams matchup last year, where it was just a shootout. I agree with you. I think this could be a shootout where we're seeing both of these teams just light it up on the scoreboard.
We have the Atlanta Falcons winning this game against the LA Rams.
We do. Also, Steven says Atlanta is going back to the Super Bowl as long as they're healthy. We're not predicting playoffs. Because, man, I mean, talk about being too early on that. But we like what Atlanta is doing. We already have them at 5-2 going into Week 8. But things get tougher when we see them losing to the Seattle Seahawks in Week 8. Just coming off the Rams. Just coming off that high emotional win that we see happening in Week 7, we think you get that little bit of come back to earth. You're getting a healthy Seattle team that's now got their best defensive player back, or best defensive lineman in Reed coming back after Week 6.
Yep.
The Seahawks are going to be formidable, especially because they want to run as opposed to passing the ball all the time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think one of the issues that the Atlanta Falcons are going to face when it comes to opposing quarterbacks are quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, who can move with his legs. I know you faced a couple with Carson Wentz so far, and if it's Mariota starts in Week 4 with the Titans, or Watson, who we have losing, and also Kyler Murray in the Week 6, I think when you actually have a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who has proven himself, who knows when it's the right time to run and the right time to pass. And I've not been shy about this. If Russell Wilson played in any other offense in the NFL, you would be talking about one of the best quarterbacks throwing the ball ever. But he doesn't. He plays a team that runs the ball first. But when he can run the ball, it's a struggle that I think Atlanta's going to find.
And like I've been saying, this is the 7th out of 8 weeks where you've played teams that think they can make the playoffs. I mean, the Titans, the Colts, the Eagles, the Vikings, notice I said Titans first, Houston, the Rams, the Seahawks. This is a brutal stretch in the season where you do not get many breaks. I think by now fatigue sets in. Going into this Week 9 bye, you're going to be happy and content going in 5-3 with a healthy roster. I think if you can do that and you only have marginal injuries, this team is going to be poised to make a playoff run. Kind of like Steven was saying, and kind of like Martavius has been thinking all along. If you get to this point, you're 5-3, you get to the bye, you're in good shape.
Yeah, because realistically, your schedule doesn't get any easier.
Well, it gets a little bit easier.
This is when you go into divisional games. Divisional games are tough. After your bye week 9, which, by the way, in my opinion, is a great time to have a bye week, you get 1 week extra to plan for the Saints. The only problem with the Saints is you're going to New Orleans to face them.
But you get the extra week. You come off on a little bit of rest. We see them beating the Saints even on the road. This Falcons team has always matched up well with the Saints. It's always one of the better games of the week when they play each other. It's not as famous as like Bears-Packers rivalry or any of these other rivalries out there, but it's still one of those games that just because it's not as talked about doesn't mean they're going to put they're not going to put a great game out there. We see them winning by an edge. We love the Saints. Yeah. We see the Saints as a 12-4 team, but we think the Falcons come out on top in this week and take this game even on the road and beat the Saints. But you stay in division. Weeks 11 and 12, you get the Panthers on the road, and then you get the Buccaneers at home after that. This is a long divisional streak where, just like we said before, this is where the season is set. You got to do well in your division to make it to the playoffs. Yeah. This is where they're going to make their hay. Even though we see them losing to the Panthers in Week 11, we see them coming back and beating the Buccaneers Week 12.
Yeah, we do. And unfortunately, in Week 11, I think just the aftermath of what that Saints game is, when you find yourself in North Carolina against these Panthers, you're going to find yourself a loss here. I think Christian McCaffrey can dominate almost any offensive line. We assume he is healthy or defensive line. We assume he's healthy at this point. And that's what the Panthers are going through. He is going to see the ball heavily, and it's going to be a lot. It's going to keep your offense on that side on the sideline and not allow you to be up there. And Martavius says he sees the Saints getting swept by the Atlanta.
Spoiler alert, we agree.
Spoiler alert, we completely agree because
I did leave him out, right? This is a 4-week stretch where you have 4 games in division. You go and play the Saints at first in Week 10. You play the Panthers on the road Week 11. You get the Buccaneers at home in 12, and you get the Saints, and then Panthers on 14 at home. This is a 5-week stretch where you play 5 of your 6 divisional games.
Yeah.
Absolutely
brutal,
but also a huge opportunity. If you can kind of demoralize a team and you can go and beat them the first time, maybe you get to go and play them at home the second time around, you get to beat them. We see that happening with the Panthers.
Yeah, and the reason I want to focus on Week 11 when you lose to the Panthers, we look at it as kind of a wake-up call for this Atlanta Falcons team. They all know they're better than to lose against the Panthers. But the Panthers are one of those teams, even with the Saints, where they're probably going to steal a win from these teams that are obviously, arguably, a lot better than they are. But when they take this loss, they can look at Week 12, Week 13, and Week 14, all division rivals in Atlanta. We see all 3 of these games being wins, and like Martavius says, sweeping the New Orleans Saints.
Huge praise from this Falcons team. Again, they're your sleeper team. Being a team that we had 12-4, and 2 of those losses come from the same team, we think Atlanta matches up really well with them. We think they play the high-flying offense that can beat the Saints. We think they also do a good job of playing good defense, especially in those interesting scenarios where even though this team is dropping 26 points, 28 points, 30 points, you're getting Drew Brees towards the end of the season. We're seeing a little bit more fatigue out of the Saints. If they do what they need to do on the defensive side of the ball, you can win. Because I don't see 33-year-old Matt Ryan showing up as tired or as worn out as 40-year-old Drew Brees can be. And I think that might be the deciding factor in these games.
Yeah. Week 15, they go on the road. They find themselves clear on the West Coast against the San Francisco 49ers. We see this as a win as well. It's not because we think that the 49ers team is that much less of a team, but we think
Jimmy G's dead by this point.
We literally think the Atlanta Falcons are on a very high roller coaster. They're looking at the top of their conference, to be honest. They're looking at the top going, man, we might get a 1-week bye. A team like the 49ers, man, we got this. We should have no issue with them. Maybe at this point in time, those young rookies on the right-hand side have finally decided to become a great offensive line. I mean, this is what Atlanta's hoping for. Is now
Well,
they have a solid offensive line.
They're hoping for the Colts scenario, right?
Exactly.
You bring in a couple of young guys, change the culture, and all of a sudden the offensive line's great. I'm not going to bet on that, but I will say this. The rest of the 49ers defense is going to struggle keeping up with a team that throws as much as the Falcons do.
Well, the strongest part of the 49ers defense is their defensive line.
Right. Absolutely.
And at this point in time, we're assuming that the Atlanta Falcons, through all their wins so far that we've given them, they became a solid unit on the offensive line.
Jeremy's saying Jimmy G is already retired before this game starts. That'd be interesting to see, Jeremy. We think he's still in the game, but we think he's probably injured, right? by 15, this is when you want to play the 49ers. You don't hope that something happens to the opposing quarterback, but when it does and you're playing Nick Mullins, this is where you beat him.
Yeah.
It is. Going into 16, you get a tough defense, which is something you haven't faced in a little while. Maybe you could say the Panthers, although we saw this Panthers defense quit. Maybe you could say the Saints, but we saw them not quite be as tough as they were in 17 as they were in 18. This could be the first legitimate defense you play in a long stretch. I see the Jaguars winning. If the Jaguars have anything left to play for, if they have any pride, if the defense has not quit yet, this is going to be a very, very difficult game to match up with the team that runs as hard as they do and plays as much defense as they do. They have good defenders in the secondary with A.J. Boye and Jalen Ramsey playing those corner positions. They're going to take some of these receivers out of the game, and I think that's where Atlanta struggles.
You had to talk me into this. You totally had to talk me into this being a loss, and you made a terrific point, is the fact that this team has not fallen apart. This team has rallied behind Nick Foles this late in the year because Nick Foles has had a few games underneath him, especially in Week 16. At this point, he's got 15 games underneath or 14 games underneath him. This defense is atrocious. I mean, it is scary, scary defense to face, especially late in the season when they're trying to keep their jobs.
No, I agree. And I'm not going to write it off. I think the AFC South is going to be a battleground. I think there's a potential that the Jaguars are still in the hunt here at this point. They're going to think they can beat these teams now that they have their quarterback. I disagree, but there's a good chance that they're still hungry and motivated.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think the Jaguars are going to be a tough team to match up with if you're a team that is more set up to beat passing offenses like the Falcons are. And I think they're going to struggle when Leonard Fournette carries the ball 25 times up the middle, even if it's 3.5 yards a carry. I think Leonard Fournette might be able to win this one ugly for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But it gets easier.
It's a bye week. I'm kidding.
It's not a bye week because this is where you get the positioning, right? You go and play the Buccaneers on the road in Tampa Bay in Week 17. We talked about the Jaguars maybe quitting. Tampa has quit, right? We think Tampa's done. They're dead in the water by this point.
It's not that they quit. It's the fact that there's no one on their defense that I fully believe can play all 16 games at a high level. And I'm even talking about Sue. I'm even talking about Devin, their young linebacker, who is sitting there going, man, is this what the NFL's like? This is tough. I mean...
Or you're saying, man, I only played 12 or 13 games a year in college. Now we're on Week 16, and I'm tired.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a struggle for the Buccaneers. We had them as one of the worst teams in 2019, but the Atlanta Falcons are rolling. They're looking at the playoffs, and the Buccaneers are in their way. And we think in 2019, the Atlanta Falcons in 11-5, roaring into the playoffs.
I agree. We'd have them one game behind the Saints. This will be a wild card team, but we believe that wild card or not, you go into this playoffs, maybe they match up with them first round. We're going to see a team that's just as dangerous coming in at 11-5 and second in their division as it would be 12-4, winning the division and getting home field advantage. The Falcons, if they make the show, they can make some impact here. Let me read a comment really quick. Martavius says he sees the Jags bouncing back from last season, but Foles is in a new system, and anything can happen on any given Sunday. But he has the Falcons winning that game. As it potentially could happen, there's a potential the defense is quit. Maybe Nick Foles hasn't lived up to expectations. Maybe the receivers let him down. Jacksonville has more question marks maybe than any other team in the NFL. But on paper, I think this is going to be a tough matchup for the Falcons. If, all things stay the same going into Week 16, and they never do.
All right, guys, we don't know if we still have you not. Facebook froze on us.
Well, they do, because that comment just came up.
Well, no, it was...
Yeah, we got him. I don't know why ours froze, but we're glad you're here still.
Okay. Either way, guys, last thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons. You spoiled it for me. This is one of my sleeper teams in the NFL. I think this team could possibly make a very deep drive into the playoffs, maybe find themselves in the NFC Championship game. I'm not going to sit there and crown them as a Super Bowl champion. I just can't see that with a team that gave up that many points to the Patriots after the halftime, regardless of who it was. That is always there.
Water under the bridge, Drew.
It's always going to be there.
Water under the bridge. Until you win one, yeah, it'll be there, but water under the bridge.
You got to win first. That's all I got to say.
All right. I don't really have a lot of second thoughts. Like you said, I think this is a dangerous team. I think this is a team that, as long as the passing offense lives up to expectations and the defense is okay, we're going to see them do pretty well. Pretty well. Yeah. That's the question. Can the defense be closer to 17 than it was in 18? For me, that's the biggest thing. I still think they're one of the better teams in the NFC. They're what makes the NFC so tough to play in, because they may win 7 games next year, they may win 11, but regardless, when you see them on the schedule, you're like, man, it's going to be a dogfight. I think the Falcons, with Dan Quinn and Dirk Cotter, have the leadership they need to be a playoff team.
All right, guys, thank you so much again for joining this evening. Thank you for all the likes, the comments, the shares. It means the world to us. We're sorry if our picture is frozen. I hope you enjoyed the sides of our face. But that being said, thank you so much to Martavius, Jeremy, Nathan, Sharif, Ivy, Frank, and Steven. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It's a great show, guys. We appreciate you coming out on this summer Friday when you could be out doing other things, obviously. Normally we have more people in here, but we are glad you're here, and we're glad you stayed committed with the show. We'll be back on Monday to talk about another NFL team, as well as everything else going on in the sports world. So, for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake, your bartender. This is Drew. We will see you then.
See ya.